Hello everyone and welcome to another video. What I'd like to do with this one is to create one big process video. This can be considered the basics as well, so I'm going to be running through everything that I'm doing from scratch. We already have a beginners series if you want to check that out for your free, but the idea with this one is I just want to make a big video just literally explaining step by step the process that I go through to make a VTuber model. Something as simple as this one. There's going to be certain aspects though that I'm going to be dabbling into a little bit differently to the beginner's tutorial, so it's always worth watching through this just in case you learn something different. In fact, I personally believe that I've actually learned a lot since the last time that I did those tutorials too. Feel free to stick around. There may be something new in this tutorial that you may not have known before. Now, this particular character though, this is a very, what I would call in terms a basic VTuber model, in that the character doesn't have any whites of the eye, there's no masking going on either. So what I want to do with this part of the video is to show you how I have arranged the layers and folders so it's ready to go into Live2D, and just kind of basically piece it apart and explain to you what each part is. For anyone who doesn't know, this is Paint Tool Sci 2. This is the art software that I use for everything. All of the drawings that I do digitally at this point in time is all done in Paint Tool Sci 2. You can use any software you want as well. It could be Clip Studio Paint, it could be Photoshop, it could be anything, as long as it has a layer system like you're seeing on the left here. So we're just going to start off with this folder. This is just a folder that contains everything. I just called it Mochi Jelly because that's the character's name. And I also have another folder which contains everything called Rig. Then we got a bow. So as you can see, that's the bow of the character. That's a separate layer. Now, another thing to also bear in mind, please do name your layers. You'll thank me later. It will get very confusing if you don't name your layers when you make your VTuber model. Just throwing it out there. If you want a bit of an easier time to identify every layer as you're working in Live2D, please name them. So this is an additional part of my character. These are the dangos on her head. If we go into that folder, you'll see that the dango is actually separated into individual parts. Now, this might be a bit overkill. You may not need to do that. You could probably get away with just merging it all together, but how I see it is you can just group it all up in a warp deformer if you don't actually want them all to be separated or be moving separately. But it's just like, it's just easier to separate them as you go, just in case you might just want them separated for whatever reason. It doesn't hurt to do stuff like that. So if you are actually uncertain whether or not to separate certain elements, you're probably just best trying to separate them all just to be on the safe side. So yeah, either way, that's the folder with all the dangos separated. And then we've also got the sprinkles and cream on top of my character's head too. If we go into that folder, you'll see that the sprinkles are separated. We have the main whipped cream separated, and then we've got the drip of the cream on the head separated too. Then we've got the right hand and the left hand. Not really sure if I want to add these because I actually kind of like the way this looks, but this can be an on and off toggle potentially, so that's why I added them anyway. Just in case I wanted to emphasize hands for whatever reason. But yeah, we got right and left hand. And then we got the face folder. This is probably going to be the most filled folder out of this particular model, just because there's a lot going on with the face always, especially if you're adding expressions and other on and off toggles to do with the face. So in this case, we've got a blush. So that'll be a on and off toggle. We do have tears as well. So what I've got here is two separate folders containing the left and right tiers of the eye, and it only contains two pieces, which one is the splash of the tear, which I hope to animate it in such a way that every time the character blinks there'll be a slight splash of the tears coming out from the eyes. And also we have the tear bubble here too, so that'll be what you mainly see when you use the on and off toggle for tears. And like I say, hopefully I'll figure out a way of making the eyes close so that a splash of tears come out from the eyes, that kind of thing. And it's pretty much the same for the right tears here. Generally speaking, they are separate in the same way. It's basically a duplicate of this side as well on the left side there. And then we got the right eye. So we have a couple of pieces here. This is to do with the on and off toggles actually. So we got a little white heart that sits in the eye for when my character is happy. So that'll be an on and off toggle too. And then we've also got a sparkle toggle as well for the eyes. Then we have, you probably can't see it actually, but if we zoom in right here, we have the eyelid there. If I was to actually turn off the base of the eye here, you can see it a little bit clearly. So that would be when the character's eyes are closing. And then we have the main eyepiece, which is all one piece, didn't do anything too elaborate with them. So it's all one single piece. And then of course we got the eyelash. So the eyelash here is separated so that then I can manipulate it a little bit more as my character's eyes close using the eyelid here. So the left eye is pretty much the same. The layers are just generally all the same. It's all a duplicate of the right folder, the right eye folder. Now, as you can see, we have 3 folders here. We've got a happy mouth, we've got a frown mouth, and a standard mouth. Now, this is a little different to how I've done it with the other tutorials. What I'm planning to do with these is to individually make each different mouth be an on and off toggle for different facial expressions. You can still use the other method. I've been using the other method of creating mouth shapes. I still use it with my own VTuber models and stuff. But as far as a basics or a beginner's tutorial video, I actually think this is probably the best way to simplify it and ease into it at least. In the case of my character, it's quite telling to change the mouth shapes. For some people you may have eyebrows and that can work just as well, so you can make separate eyebrows if you wanted to, but we're not going to be worrying about that in this tutorial. Just to show you, we have the standard mouth and we have the top line of the mouth here. We have the upper lip. This might be kind of hard to see, but basically it's the body of the Mochi character, but it's separated like that. So that allows you to cover up any issues to do with the inner mouth and such. And then we've got the outer mouth. Again, let me just hide the inner mouth. So that also gives me a little bit more control over the inner mouth situation, just in case I need to tweak anything so it aligns properly. And then we've got the inner mouth, which is the tongue and the inside of the mouth. So that's all one big shape too. So if we also go into the frown, you can tell that the expression is different. So it's a similar layout pretty much. So you got the main upper mouth here. We've got the upper mouth here too. You can probably see a difference in something there, but the same logic applies. We've also got the outer mouth line here and the inner mouth here. So it's pretty much the same throughout. And this is the happy mouth too. So same thing. Yeah. So that's how I've constructed the mouths this time. So this is actually a little different to how I done it with the beginner's tutorial. But yeah, generally speaking, I just wanted to give this a try because at least it kind of gives you a little bit more control over different expressions. You can do it with eyebrows, you can do it with the eye shapes even, depending on what it is that you're aiming to achieve. Putting it on a toggle would really help express your character more so. I know it can be very difficult, however, to press the button on the basis of how you're feeling, but I think it comes with practice at the end of the day. I know that I can struggle with that myself when I'm Twitch streaming. I very, very rarely use the toggles for my expressions, even though I've got them, quite a lot of them actually. But either way, it's definitely a thing worth practicing and trying. It can also, especially with something as simple as this, like if you're sad about something, it'd be very easy to imply that your character's sad just by pressing a button, you know? So, or expressing how happy you were by pressing the button for happy, you know, that kind of thing. There's something in that, and I do believe that this is probably a really good, easy way to add, a few expressions here and there. And going near to the end of the list, we have sparkles. So this is actually the left and right part of this character. So we have sparkles here, some sparkles there, sparkles here, and sparkles there. I have actually made a video about idle animation for your VTuber model, so feel free to check that out if you want to, which also actually plays a part in what I want to do with this one here too. I want those pieces to reappear and disappear and sparkle, basically. And it's meant to imply sugar, as I wrote it in the folder. It's sugar sparkles. So that is the idea for that one. And then the last part is the body. So it's literally the entirety of the body of the model. And that is basically it. That's how I've structured this particular rig to go into Live2D. Now, just a bit of a brief talk about your artwork size, because I think this has been a bit of an issue with some people. Like maybe people have been having issues with pixelation of their artwork when putting it into Live2D and stuff. Basically, if you have set it to a big size in Live2D, but you have drawn the model to be quite small, sadly, it's going to have a lot of pixelation. If you don't draw it to be quite big and you give it a big size in Live2D, it's going to add pixelation to your model. You'd be best off trying to pick a size that suits your model's size, if you know what I mean. And I think the best way to just double check on this is to just go on your canvas size or your canvas resolution and just see what size your actual file is. But anyway, I just wanted to very quickly touch on that aspect to it because I think I've had a few questions about that here and there. If you don't make your model big enough and you give it a big resolution on Live2D, it's going to sadly be pixelated. Set your canvas size, draw what you want to draw, put the time and effort into it, into that resolution size to begin with, and you should be fine overall. You can literally size down the model if you wanted to along the way, if you need to do that. But that is honestly the best way to go. I tend to make my characters quite big, actually. It can be between 3000 by 3000 to 4000 or even 5000 by 5000 pixels, just to be absolutely certain that I can scale up to that if I really, really wanted to. So yeah, just throwing that out there for anyone who's wondering about things like canvas size and such. So we're going to take this character into Live2D and we're going to get started rigging this one. So this is Live2D Cubism. This is 4.0.09, the version, if you're wondering. And just to say, because I know some of you may not have the full version of Live2D, this is actually a paid version that you can have on a yearly subscription basis. You can purchase it, or you could download the free version, where there is no time limit to the free version. However, there will be limitations to what you can do with your parameters in the software, which is what is used to actually create your model. But generally speaking, you can get a lot of it done. I remember when I first started out making VTuber models with one of my characters, Can't Refuse, that I was able to create quite a simple model effectively through this method, and it did quite well. But of course, when I moved on to my other model, which had like masking for the eyes and it was a human sort of character, let's say, there was certainly a lot more limitations. I couldn't even make on and off toggles as much. There was problems, let's say. But if you do get to that point where you want to create your on and off toggles for your character, I recommend going for their other free version, which allows you to use the entirety of the software with everything, no limitations, for 42 days. This 42-day trial will be crucial to completely finish off your model and you have more than a month to do it too. So you've got a nice sum of time, let's say, to do it. And you should have enough time to be able to create your model as long as you follow the tutorials. And also, just to let you know, I do have a whole series again of tutorials that very specifically pinpoint certain ways of creating expressions for your character as well, more so in the advanced tutorials, as well as the beginners tutorial that delves into other things too as well. So, you know, there's plenty of information on this channel if you are needing to know something very specific. The advanced tutorial, let's say, is very much good for the human aspect of making a model, but the beginner's tutorial is something a little simpler, using simpler eyes, and something that may even be considered something not so human, let's say, or something chibi, effectively. Like, if you're looking for that, the beginners is good for that, and this video too, just to kind of reiterate on that. But that is how I would go about it if you are really needing to do something and you need to do it for free. That is the way I would go about it, in that order. So we're going to start by putting our model into Live2D Cubism. We're going to put Mochi in there. We're going to locate the file, the PSD file. So just locate your file for your model and just drag it into the scene here. And Live2D will just load it up for you. Now, all of your layers are in this part window here. So you can gain access, highlight whatever layers in this window if you want, but I would say the most important window is the deformer window, and we'll get into that very soon. Now, before we do anything, we need to highlight all of the pieces. So again, here we have the deformer window. If we click on this top layer here, the very top of the list, scroll down the list, hold Shift, and click the last part of your model. We have everything highlighted. There's no need to highlight it in this window. This is the most easiest way you could do it very quickly. So with that, we're going to go into this called Automatic Mesh Generator. And I'm going to put it onto standard. This drop down here, just go on standard. And now we've got vertices for a character. Just click on the cross. Now that's done, let's click on Edit Texture Atlas at the top here. Now make it the size that you want it to be for your model. Again, just to reiterate, if your model is small, you're probably best keeping it on this size. But if your model has the potential to be quite a lot bigger, you may as well go a bit bigger than that. For me, I can probably get away with this amount of pixels for my model, so I'm going to select that, and I'm going to do the same for this too. Make sure also that the width and height are the same size too. You can name your texture atlas if you want, but you could just leave it as is and just click on OK. Now, Live2D has effectively highlighted all of the pieces for you, put it into a texture atlas here. This has to be done so that software like FaceRig or Vtube Studio know what it looks like. Just click on OK at the bottom. Now, we need to save it. So, what I would recommend is go on Save As, make a new folder. So to do that, you can do it very easily in the window for Live2D here for the Save As function. If you just go and right click and go on New Folder, you can name it whatever you want to. I'm going to call it Mochi Model. And then we've got a folder here. So just double click on that and save your file into this folder. Now it's all saved. Now before we get into the main rigging, we do need to set up some basic deformers for the model. The easiest way to get started, I would say, is to do the same thing again. Click on your top layer of your model and go all the way down and press Shift and highlight the body. And all of it should be selected again. Go on this button here called Create Warp Deformer and just simply click Create. So now we have ourselves a deformer. Now, just to give you a bit of a basic rundown as to what deformers are for, you can literally deform whatever is within your warp deformer. So we have put all the pieces into this one single warp deformer here, and you can now see it in the deformer window. And you can just do stuff like this. You can just deform it, do whatever you want. So hopefully that in itself could kind of tell you the potential in what you can do with Live2D and how to create perspective in Live2D with your models. But this is what I would consider the base deformer for your model. Now that we have it, we can actually click on this little arrow and now everything is literally within itself, like within this warp deformer, kind of like a folder in, say, Photoshop or Paint Tool SAI. While we're here, I like to add a rotation deformer. So I'm going to click on this warp deformer here in the warp deformer window, and I'm going to create a rotation deformer. So you could call it rig rotation, call it whatever you want, and click create. Now just press and hold Control on your keyboard and click on the center of your rotation deformer, and you'll be able to drag it down to wherever you want. I want to kind of centralize it at the bottom here. You can also make this ring bigger if you want to by holding down the Alt key and clicking and dragging the left mouse button on the outer circle here. You can adjust it however you want. And you can also do that for the stick here as well, that's sticking out. So if you hold down Alt, you can bring the handle up as well, make it bigger. Now that basically allows us to rotate our character, which is great for the angle Z parameter, which we'll go into soon. Now that we've got the rotation, just go back into the warp deformer here, just click it and click the little left arrow here to drop down and see all of the layers again. Now, the best way to know how to add more deformers is to just look at your current folder layout. This is probably the easiest way to deal with it. So say, for example, in this part window here, you've created folders to organize your layers, right? So all you'd really have to do is look in your parts window. We've got a Dango folder here. Just click on the layer and bring it all the way down to the other pieces that you have within this folder and create a deformer for it. That is the easiest way to start, I would say. So again, it has assumed that this is the Dango, so that sounds great to me. It's going to create the warp deformer. And now we have a warp deformer for the Dangos. So that means we can effectively manipulate that now. So basically I would just do this throughout. If you've got, say, in this case, a bow just hanging out, make that a deformer. If it's not named appropriately, I would recommend renaming it. So just go and call it, in my case, warp deformer of bow, create. So we've got a deformer for that. And just literally go down this part list in the same way. So we got the sprinkles, the cream and sprinkles for the head. Just select all of these, create a warp deformer. And we've got a warp deformer for that too. We've got the right and left hand. I want to make those separate to each other, so I'm going to go ahead and make a warp deformer. Name it right hand. And we've got a warp deformer. And left hand, and make a warp deformer for that. Blush, make that a warp deformer. We've got the tears here, make these warp deformers. Basically just keep doing this until you've created warp deformers of all of the folders that you have. And there you go. So now you can look at this deformer window. We now have the deformers in their basic form, similar to the parts window here at the top. As you're working in Live2D, you'll find yourself finding it so much easier to navigate in the deformer window on the bottom here, the bottom left. And it just makes it easier to refer to the deformers as you go. Now, if you ever find yourself in a situation where for some reason one of your deformers are not showing the usual vertices, like it does with, say, that one, the reason why is because it's currently hidden in your parts window. So in my case, the tiers are currently hidden because of this folder here. So if I was to click on the eye to make them reappear, you'll see that they've appeared as well as showing the actual deformer as it should. So just throwing that out there. Now that we've got the base deformers down, it's about refining the deformers at this point. We can refine them as we go along though. Personally, what I'd like to start off with is the eye blinks and the actual mouth motion, so that we can get that down first, and then we can worry about how the character's going to look moving left and right, up and down in software like Vtube Studio. For simplicity, I think I'm going to hide the hands so that I can see the face a little bit more. I'm going to locate the eyes. You can locate pieces by simply clicking on it and finding it through the list here, or you can find it in the deformers window. I just want to make sure that I have everything unhidden. I'm just going to click on specifically the pieces that I need to make the eye blink happen. Once you have made sure that all of your main eye pieces that you want to create the blink with are visible, we can get started on making the eyes blink in Live2D. Now, it's probably worth talking about your preferences for your model. How I like to make my eye parameters is for it to only focus on the one eye instead of two eyes. This is simply because software like Vtube Studio or FaceRig or whatever you use, the concept of being able to blink, as in closing one of your eyes, is very, very unlikely. It's very difficult to do. You probably have to have the best kit to be able to do that, or the best webcam, or the best lighting. It's a bit of a nightmare. It's not really possible, I don't think, anyway. They try, and I will say that Vtube Studio has been the closest to be able to make your model blink in that way with one eye. But I would sooner just focus on the one eye. Now, that one eye is quite important to your webcam setup, let's say. And that could be its own talk, really. Like, make sure generally that your webcam is always in front of you. Doesn't have to be silly close to your face or anything, but it has to be maybe 30 centimeters away from your face. I find that's probably the best kind of capture, maybe a little further away than that if you can, but it's got to be central to your face, right? If your camera is literally on the desk or is not aligned to your face, you're going to have problems with that. So I recommend even looking into a webcam arm or something that will allow you to adjust your webcam to whatever you want. You can get a very cheap one on Amazon as well, where you can just allow your webcam to be screwed onto it and you can adjust it as you please. Generally speaking, through that setup of your webcam, bear in mind what it is that you're doing as well. Like if you're a Twitch streamer, for example, you may have a second monitor, which is what I do as well. I have a second monitor where I play my games on the far right of myself. Now, you want to be able to align that webcam so that it will see your face, the Vtube Studio software or whatever software you're using. If you're looking to the right, you've got to focus on your left eye for your parameter. If you're looking to the far left from your webcam, you've got to focus on your actual right eye, because if you don't do that, then when you turn your head, your other eye is going to be covered up, right? Now, I think very recently VTube Studio has, I think, created an update where if it doesn't detect the other eye, it will assume that the other eye is what it needs to be targeting. But I think it's just a good thing to consider regardless, like which eye should you be focusing on for your model in that kind of circumstance. If you're someone though who is finding themselves not really looking either left or right, I still would kind of consider like what's the likelihood of your character looking to the left or right, like which one is the better option. I would even though just on a sort of preference sort of basis, if you want to make your character look like they're actually moving, maybe even making it so that your monitor's on the left or maybe your stepper's on the right or whatever, it can kind of create a nice sort of sense of perspective and sense of movement for your character instead of it being your model just looking straight at the viewer constantly all the time. Just something to consider, you know, like in terms of adding more movement to your model, it's worth considering and thinking about, right? So I'm just throwing that out there because I do feel like that's quite an important thing. If you're finding yourself it's not really working for you for whatever reason, that your character's not blinking, it's probably because you've put more emphasis on the other eye that the camera can't see, if you know what I mean. So just kind of keep that in mind for when you make your model. So for me, because I'm looking to the right all the time, I want the emphasis to be on my left eye on webcam. Now, I know this is going to sound confusing, but just hear me out. It's got to be in terms of the parameters here, because you've got eye right open, for example. You would think it would be the eye left open, right? It's not. It is eye right open. I know it's confusing, but it's kind of like if you can imagine, okay, I want my left eye to be seen. You've got to have it the opposite for the parameter. Having said that though, if you do find yourself in a situation where for some reason you had to change out the parameters or use something different, you could go ahead and actually transfer the keyforms into the eye left parameters or the eye right parameters or whichever. So it's not the end of the world, I will say. It is possible. But just to keep that in mind, in my case, I have to focus on eye right, so I will be using the eye right parameters. But focus on the ones that you need to focus on. The same things will apply though, what we're going to do next. Now, you could go ahead and even put these into folders if you wanted to. We may as well do that because maybe it might help you with the grouping of certain elements for your model. So if you want to group something, all you have to do is click on the folder here. It says create new folder. You can call this X, Y, and Z. If you highlight angle X and then press shift and select down to angle X, you can drag it and put it into the folder, and now it is in the folder. You can also drag folders so you can reposition everything, make it easier for you. I'm going to actually put the mouth at the top because I feel like it's quite a crucial one. The others, you know, it's up to you whether or not you want to use it. Personally, I'm not going to be using the body X and Y and Z parameters because of the X and Y and Z angle parameters being enough. If you're making a human model, however, you can use the body X and Y and Z along with the angle X and Y and Z. It's like it's a bit unnecessary, that's all. You don't really need to go as far as making body parameters. It's not really needed. At least something as simple as this anyway. I think another important one here is breathing. So we definitely need breathing. So I'm just going to drag it up here. These, however, I think we'll drag this up here too. These particular parameters are usually used for physics, for hair. Now, this could be used in lots of different ways. It doesn't have to be for hair. I can add a bit of a bounciness, let's say, to my character every time my character moves. I can add a bounce also to the cream on my character's head too, that kind of thing. And that can be achieved using these parameters. You can, however, make more physics. You don't have to be limited to just those 3 parameters, but those are the default in the Live2D software. This can simply be done by just making a new parameter and copying the details of the parameter. So say if you want to know the exact parameter details, all you have to do is go on left click on your mouse, edit parameter, and you have the ranges here. That's kind of important really. You got to make sure that the ranges are exactly the same. So in this case we have -1.0, default 0.0 and maximum 1.0. And of course we've got the parameters here too. You can call the name and the ID something different, but bear in mind that if you're using FaceRig, you've got to keep it the same. They don't allow, I don't think, for unique physics and physics names. Just to kind of keep that in mind. I'm not 100% sure if you can add more physics to FaceRig, but I know you can with Vtube Studio and possibly other software out there too. So I'm just going to simply call this folder physics. Just drag it into that folder. And I think that's it. I think we've pretty much gotten most of the main ones done. I just added this parameter that's not meant to be there, by the way. I'm just going to drag this into the left eye because it's meant to be for the left eye smile. So everything that's left eye related, put it into the left eye folder. Mistakes happen. It's very easy to undo, so don't worry about it. And I will say, what you're seeing here, we don't need to worry about brow right angle, we don't need to worry about brow right form or brow right Y and X. We don't actually have to worry about those ones. In fact, I think I'll just move this up here so that we can easily separate them off a little bit. So the main things we should be worrying about is literally eye right open and eye right smile, which is something I don't think I've gone into yet, which is basically every time that you smile, say in Vtube Studio for example, it changes the shape of your eyelids. So if you want to look happy while you're smiling in the software, you can make the eyes look like they're happy, that kind of thing, which I think is a really cool and cute little detail. But like I say, we don't need to worry about these. You can easily delete them. In fact, if you wanted to delete these, you could. It just depends on whether or not you want to maybe add eyebrows along the way at some point for your model. It's really up to you, honestly. But these are the main ones that I'm going to be focusing on for the eyes opening and closing. So we're going to start off with this eye here. What I'm going to do is go into the deformer window here, and I'm going to highlight the left eye piece here. And I'm also going to highlight the other expressions too. You may not have expressions right now, but I'm going to do that. If you have expressions for your eye, I would do this. So highlight the main base eye, hold down Control on your keyboard, and highlight the other expressions. So the sparkle and the heart. You can't see it because it's hidden, but they're highlighted. Now we want to make a deformer for them. So we're going to call it left eye and create. So just to show you, if we unhide the expressions for the eye and we move the eye around, you can see that it's also moving along with it. If you didn't do that, the other pieces, the other expressions for the eye would actually be not moving around with the base eye. So that's why I say this is quite important, because you kind of want it to deform along with the base eye. Now we're going to make a deformer for the eyelash as well and call this eyelash. Create. And we're going to also make a eyelid deformer too. Like that. So we now got separate deformers that we can manipulate for the parameters. Now you're probably all wondering at this point, why is it that I'm using warp deformers so much? Why can I just not use the actual pieces? Because you can deform them by themselves. You're probably thinking, well, I could probably just do that and that'd be fine. The issue that I have with doing that personally is that if for whatever reason you wanted to swap out your pieces, so say for example if you wanted to say change the color of the character's eyes or change the color of the character's body, that kind of thing, it'd be very difficult. Let's say it would not be the most cleanest way of adding to your character. Personally, always using deformers, especially if you're adding elements, even added visuals to your character, it would be so much better for you to just use deformers. It will transfer well if you're having to edit anything, especially if they are drastic edits. It would just be better in the long term for you to just use deformers as much as you possibly can, and it should be fine. But that is the reason why I use deformers so much, because it does just make the whole process of editing your model later on, for whatever reason, if you had to, a lot easier. But also I kind of like the way the deformers are used, really. Like, okay, yeah, you can do stuff like this, but if you wanted something a little bit more specific in movement, you'd have to start moving the vertices like this, and it's just a bit, yeah, it's just not fun. Personally, with a deformer, I think using these handles are quite useful, and, you know, very slight deformation can be had with it. There's something a little bit more uniform about using a deformer for me. So I've had questions about scrolling in and out of the canvas like this before. How I'm doing it is using the scroll wheel on my mouse, and I would actually recommend, especially if you're doing work like this, to get a mouse that has a scroll wheel. It will make things a lot easier for you as you're working. But if you did want to zoom in and out, there is a zoom out and in function down here, so you can do the same thing, just click on those. And also, if you're wanting to like drag around like this at all, just hold down the spacebar on the keyboard and drag with the left mouse button. Alright, so we're going to start trying to get this eye opening and closing. Now, currently I have the eyelid visible so that I can see just how much we need to deform the eye so it looks like it's closed. We're going to start off with the main eye base here. So this main eye part that we just put a deformer in. And we're going to go and click on this parameter here that says eye right open. We are going to then click on this button here that says add to keyforms. Now the far right is when the character's eye is open, so we don't touch this keyform, but what we do need to do is left click on this far left keyform here. This is the keyform where your character's eye will be fully closed. So this is where we deform the actual eye base. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and squish it like this as much as possible. Maybe rotate it like that, so it hides behind the eyelid. Now, as you can see, we've got some movement going on, and that's because this is kind of like a keyframe in animation terms, but they call them keyforms in Live2D. They are taking into account the original position of your eye, and then when we go to the closed eye state, you've deformed it so that it hides behind the actual eyelid that we have for the character. Now, this may need some editing, but that's like the general basis of that. But of course we have the eyelid, right? This eyelid is constantly there even when the eye is open. So that means we have to edit it and add another keyform somewhere so that we can make it appear at the right time. So we're going to go ahead and find the eyelid, and we're going to click on the eyelid piece. And this is also another aspect of having everything in deformers. When you find yourself needing to edit opacity levels of every piece, and you edited the actual raw piece of the model in parameters and keyforms, it becomes a nightmare because you have to literally edit all of the keyforms to have that low opacity. That's another plus and reason for why you should always use deformers. Now that we have this highlighted, we're going to click on eye right open, make sure it's highlighted, and create two keyforms again using this button. And make sure this keyform is highlighted by right clicking on the keyform. That snaps right exactly onto the keyform. So just bear that in mind. It's quite a useful little thing to do. Just always click with the right mouse button and it will just snap right to the keyform you're trying to go onto. And we're going to make this 0 opacity. As you can see, it's no longer there anymore, but we do have a slight delay going on here. Because of how tweening works in Live2D, you've got to effectively create another keyform so that it doesn't just ease out and ease in so much, because this will be a problem, especially if your character's squinting at any point while you're using your model. It'll be noticeable when that happens. You'll just see like this very soft eyelid coming through way too soon. So the way to deal with this is to go on this button here that says Edit Keyforms Manually. Click on that and go on this line here that says 0.05. Click on that and it will have created a keyform for you. Click on OK. Now we've created a new keyform. Now what we want is for this keyform to have 0 opacity as well. So as you can see, it just snaps into place, right? So instead of having like this long drawn out sequence of opacity happening through tween, it's now going to happen very snappy and quickly. So we technically got a blink. We've got a very basic blink going on. The thing that we need to figure out is the eyelash, because the eyelash needs to be, in a way, moving along with everything else. We're going to highlight the deformer for the eyelash, and we're going to create two keyforms for the eye right open parameter. So what we're going to do is try and see if we can make it move appropriately. For this last keyform here, we may have to deform it a little bit like that, maybe rotate it a little bit, bring it in like that. Now that's not too bad really, you could get away with that being okay. But if you did really want to edit this a little further, you could add more keyforms. So say for example, if it reaches this point of the transition and you're not actually happy with the way it's looking there, you could create a keyform. Now to create a keyform just right out the gate, like you're just scrolling and thinking, ah yeah, I would like this to be in a different position, you could just go on Add Single Keyform right there. And you've added yourself a custom keyform. Now you can literally edit it the way you want it to go or be. And you have effectively refined the movement a little bit more. Now it may take some tweaking, you may have to add a little more to the definition of the movement. It's like we're already seeing just a little bit of something going on there that's not quite right. You could actually in fact go on this already existing keyform here, but you have to add still another keyform. So if you went and clicked on Add Single Keyform, that will make it green for that particular deformer. And now you can move it like this. And you can even deform it a little bit if you want to as well. Whatever it is that you're planning to do, you can adjust it however way you want. There you go. I might just actually move the eyelash like that. It's not too bad. So we got one eye blink done. Now we could basically start from scratch with this right eye here, but there is a way of duplicating the values that we just put into the eye right open for that left eye that we just did. Now what we're going to do, it may seem strange, but we don't actually need the eye pieces for the eye right. What we're going to do is use these pieces though as a guide effectively. So if we go on the opacity with all of these highlighted on the right eye here, we can bring them all down like this, just very slight, so we can see where everything is. We're going to go back into the warp deformer for the left eye here and highlight everything that we've done in the eye right open, including its deformers. So literally highlight everything, all of the pieces, all of the deformers. And we're going to go Control C. And now we are going to paste pieces into the eyewrite folder in the parts window. So just go Control V. Like that. So everything's been pasted along with the pieces as well as the warp deformers, the duplicate of the current eye that we have blinking on the left here. You can't see it, but it's there. Now we've got to go into modeling, edit shape, reflect. Make sure that reflect horizontally is selected and click OK. So now the eye should be reflected. We also need to drag the deformers and pieces here that we have highlighted into the eyewrite warp deformer here. We're going to also remove the current pieces here that we're using as a reference outside of the warp deformer. So we're going to do that. Just put it right at the bottom of the list. Don't select any of the deformers. And release. So it's no longer in the warp deformer anymore. Now, we do need to reposition this warp deformer. This can be done by holding down Control on your keyboard and dragging to where the eye is, like that, so it's realigned properly again. And now it's just about dragging the eye over to the other side, like that. Make sure it's aligned to the reference. And we can even now highlight these pieces here that were our reference and delete them. Just press the delete button on the keyboard, like that, so they're gone. So now they blink. Now you could get away with doing it from scratch, but this is, I would say, the quickest way of making a consistent blink using the eyewrite open parameter like that. So at this point, I'd say that the eyewrite open here is done. We've effectively made our VTuber model be able to blink. We're now going to move on to the eyewrite smile. So this is actually quite an optional thing. You don't have to do this, especially if your character's blink has already got a bit of a smiley blink anyway. But say, for example, when the character closes their eyes and they happen to be smiling, and you happen to be smiling on VTube Studio, then you can make it react accordingly in that way. If you're at a neutral state, it will look like this potentially, but when you're happy, you can make the eyelids look a lot happier. It's worth giving a go. Just to add a little bit more character, or a little bit more movement to your character, a little variation of facial expression. Now, I know also looking at the deformers, it may start getting a little confusing to you, so it might be worth renaming these to something else. You can rename all your deformers in the inspector window here. We can basically make this LAR and click enter, and it will change it for you. So there is no problem with that. So now we need to highlight both the right eyelid and the left eyelid deformer here, because these are the ones we want to edit for the happy eyewrite smile parameter. If we make two keyforms for the eyewrite open here, as well as two keyforms for the eyewrite smile, we now have to edit it to create the happy expression. The far right keyform will be the happiest state for your character's eyelids, and this will be the default state for your character's eyelids. So if we just snap to the right keyform here by pressing the right mouse button, we're going to start off with the right eyelid here. So what I'm going to do is highlight by using the left mouse button and dragging, so I can highlight some of these points for the deformer. I'm now going to also just raise it up like that, slightly. This does mean, however, that we're going to probably have to go ahead and edit this slightly, because we're seeing a bit of the eye showing there, which is fine. We'll do that later. But that is an easy way of effectively editing the eyelid to create a different expression, like that. Try and keep it consistent though. Don't make it too different to the the original pose, because you kind of want it to stay in the same place. You don't want it to deform too much or be too wide or bigger than the previous. Like, just always scrub along the parameter line here. See how you feel about it. Adjust if need be. Like that. So that's one eye done. So we're going to do that on the other side. Just highlight the middle. Raise it up. Like that. And same on this side too. Just go by what you think works. There you go. So we've got like slight movement going on here. Now of course we're going to have to edit this base eye so that it works along with everything else, because it's kind of like peeking through and we still kind of want it to be behind the actual eyelid, and we're probably going to have to do that with the eyelash too, because the eyelash is kind of like peeking out a bit too much too. So effectively we could have highlighted all of the deformers, but I didn't think I needed to, but it's fine. You can just add more keyforms if need be. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to highlight the main eyes here along with the eyelash deformers, and we're just going to create 2 deformers for the eye right smile using the add 2 keyforms button. Now we're just going to effectively tweak it. So I'm going to start with the base eye for the left eye, and we're just going to adjust it a little bit. Adjust it if need be though. Feel free to use the deformers. Make sure it all fits. Like that. And I'm also going to highlight the lash here and tweak it as well if need be. Use the deformers so that we can just drag it in, make it work like that. There we go, we got a little bit of something going on here that's working. So as you can see, if we were to go to the neutral state, it will blink as normal, and then if we go into the happier state here, you'll see that it blinks as normal too, but it's in a different shape. Like that. It's very slight for my character, I have to say, but works really well if you have maybe more detailed eyes going on. But that is the general premise of how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep tweaking this, I think. So yeah, I'm just thinking that I'm going to actually edit these parts of the eyelash because I'm not liking how thick they are at this point. So I'm just going to very slightly bring it in like that. But I think this just sort of emphasizes the point. There's a lot of trial and error that goes into it, but also a lot of refinement. You can't really escape that. You just have to go by what you think looks right a lot of the time. I can only effectively give you the tools or the knowledge to help expand on your own models. There we go. I think that's a little better. It just sort of snaps a bit nicer, let's say. Like I say, it's so slight, you can barely tell the difference, but that is the premise anyway, the main premise of the eye right smile in this case. And of course, if you're using eye left, it's all the same, or both, it's all the same premise. So it's all completely fine, however way you do it. So I would say that that's pretty much the eyes done. We now have effectively made our character blink. Okay, so we're going to move on to making the mouth open and close. Now I want to try and keep this as simple as possible. We have 3 different kinds of mouths, but we don't have to worry about that right now. This is just simply about getting the mouth opening and closing with a standard mouth. So what we're going to do is basically do what we did before, which is make deformers of all of these pieces. But we'll play it by ear because it's possible that maybe we don't need to use all of these individual deformers. But I would say maybe the most important right now to start off with is the upper lip here, this line. We're going to start off with the mouth form. And we're going to create 2 keyforms. Now, this may seem different to how we've done it before, and my theory is that with say software like Vtube Studio, may be different though, however, with FaceRig and other software. Vtube Studio, I would recommend as a software. It's a very good software. You can even use it for free, and it's very cheap at the minute too. So if you're starting out as a VTuber and you just want to put a little bit of money into a really decent, good software to really sink time into and learn, you can do literally a lot of things with that software, and I just recommend it. Just check it out, give it a go. But this is the reason why I'm going this route, because I believe that the simpler you go with the mouth in terms of keyforms, the easier it is. So if we were to look at the keyform parameter here, this will be the neutral state of your character's mouth, and this will be the happiest state of your character's mouth. Because let's face it, when it comes down to it, most software is just can't detect a sad frown or of any kind, unless you did try to maybe do it through eyebrows or something like that. But we're not going to go into that. Generally speaking, if we're talking about mouth shapes here and the webcam and what it's capable of detecting, it will never detect the sad expression of a person's mouth. So you're best off, like I say, you have different mouth shapes here, and why I wanted them to be on and off toggles, because you just always be better off using on and off toggles, always, when it comes to at least implying sadness in your model. So in this case, I'm thinking of maybe just slightly editing this particular line on this neutral state here, and keeping this pretty much the same on the happiest state here, because the character already looks quite happy. I'm thinking that it might work out quite well if I was to try and edit it slightly. So we're going to do that right now. For the far left keyform, again, make sure that's highlighted, and we're just going to like edit it to kind of imply a bit more of a straighter mouth, really. Even if it's slight, it might just bring in a little bit more of a sort of neutral mouth state. Like that. And then we're going to do the same on this side here. This may need some tweaking though. Don't worry about the inner mouth layer showing too much. That'll be sorted. Something like that. So that you can see that there's a slight difference. We may still need to do a bit of tweaking here because I'm not liking how inaccurate it's looking right now. So let me just attempt to correct it a little bit. So as you can see, the upper mouth has a bit of a slight happiness thing going on with it, but at the same time it can get happier. So this will be your neutral mouth state, like I say, and this will be the happiest mouth. So if you're smiling, it will be like full on how you're seeing it right now. So that does mean, however, that we need to start editing the rest of these shapes. So the mouth open is quite crucial for this part. If we go on mouth open, the mouth open parameter, I think pretty much select all of the deformers here. So the mouth, the outer mouth, which is the line outside the inner mouth, and the warp deformer for standard inner mouth here, and even the upper lip. And we're just going to create 3 keyforms for the mouth open. Now the far left state is basically the mouth closed. So we're going to try and achieve the character's mouth being closed at this point. We are going to start, I think, with the inner mouth and the standard outer mouth here. We can edit these both at the same time too, if we need to. We're going to just do something like that, something as simple as that. And of course, the upper lip needs to be adjusted to what's just happened here. So I think if we can just stretch this out a little bit, we can cover it all up like that. I mean, you can kind of still see some inner mouth going on, so you just kind of stretch the lip so that it covers it up. So we got a little bit of this going on. Now, if we go on to the middle keyform here, we can effectively do the same thing. So highlight those deformers again and just bring it up like that, but not going all the way up. There you go. This is the most open mouth state too. And I don't think we really need to edit too much as far as the upper lip is concerned for the middle keyform. I think it's fine. Oh, maybe we can actually hide this bit here, thinking about it. So let's just hide the inner mouth there. And then do the same here. Like, I think we need to hide the inner mouth here as well. There you go. That's very basic. Now, of course, we need a little bit more tweaking going on here for the mouth forms. So that means that we need to highlight the upper skin of the mouth here, go on mouth form and add 2 keyforms. Now we just need to edit, effectively, the skin so that it doesn't show so much. Like that. Now we're going to go on the standard inner mouth deformer here because I'm noticing again that it could do with being corrected slightly. I'm going to probably do this also for the outer mouth, the outer line for the inner mouth. And we're going to go on the mouth form here too and go on add 2 keyforms. So effectively, let's start off with the line of the mouth here and then use the outer mouth here so we can round it off a little bit more. Now I kind of like the idea of deforming it just a little bit more to imply more movement, because at the minute it's just very stationary, right? I mean, this can work, but it would be nice to just stretch out the mouth a little bit more so it kind of goes to the corners of the mouth. So again, if we go on the outer mouth deformer here and the standard inner mouth and make sure that it's highlighted like that, we can just stretch it out just a little bit. You can even edit it like that. It's kind of going outside of the line. And then if we go onto the bottom keyform here for the mouth form, we can do a similar thing too. So if we go onto the middle keyform for the mouth open, you can just like stretch it out a little bit like this. And bring the corners in a little bit like that. There we go. Again, we can just spread it out a little bit more here. As you can see, like if you're in a neutral state and your mouth is slightly open, this is how it's going to look. That's how it's going to deform. You can certainly put more time into this generally than I have, but that kind of gives you some potential to just give it a slight movement instead of it just being very sort of puppet-like and it's very stiff. You can just give it that mouth form where it just very slightly gives it a deformation, really. It's worth giving it a go, but we've basically got ourselves mouth movement too. That is basically the eyes and mouth done. So if you were to effectively put this into Vtube Studio right now, your character will be able to blink on the basis of your webcam and be able to move its mouth on the basis of the webcam too, or using audio-based lip sync. But yeah, like basically it's a lot of tweaking overall, but you should get there in the end. Just keep at it and you'll get an end result. A lot can certainly be done with it though. I'd like to tweak this a little bit more, but that's the general basis of the character. Now, debatably, the hardest part, which is to actually make the body move in conjunction to your head movement. So the easiest part we can do here at this point is to find all of the mouth deformers and the eye deformers. So at this point, we're trying to look for the parts that will make the character's head move. What I'm wanting to look for at the minute is the face. I'm looking for the face deformers, so particularly we need to highlight stuff like the tears, the right and left eyes, even the happy mouth and frown, standard mouth, even though that we've not actually done anything with the happy and frown mouth yet, the blush, and let's see, what else do we need here? I think that might be it. Yeah, I think for now we'll stick with the face. So with that, we have all of the deformers highlighted, and what I'm going to do is make another deformer, and this is going to be called face. I'll call it face X and Y. Hey there guys, this is me from the future. Basically I want to let you know of an issue that I came across with this particular model, which is surprising that I've not had this issue with any other model up until this point, so it's quite important to know about this. I'm going to show you exactly how to deal with it too if you need to correct things yourself, but I troubleshooted it and I've come to a conclusion and answer to the problem. So effectively, the issue I was having was, despite having had the warp deformer for X and Y already mapped with these green keyforms so that I can move left, right, up and down with the face, the issue that I was having was when I put it into Vtube Studio, the face wasn't actually moving at all. Like, the body was moving though, but not the face. So the face was like always constantly in the middle despite the body moving, and it's because the body has been obviously keyformed separately to the main face deformer. Now, to be able to fix this, however, it has a lot to do with the part that we designated to the deformer. Now, this is my bad, of course. Like, this is something I should have known this really all this time. But I didn't think it was that much of a big deal until now, because it really does have an influence in terms of making sure that everything is functioning as it should. So effectively, this was selected on L tiers. That is wrong. It should be selected on face. Now, I'm not quite sure why that's happened. I think maybe it's because it's trying to designate the deformer to a particular folder in the parts window, I'm assuming. So if you can see that the face folder is right here, that's where the deformer is located, basically. So it's in that same hierarchy where the face folder is. Now, I'm assuming that instead it was on L tiers, so that meant that the deformer was under the same folder as the L tiers folder here. So what happened is, I think, is that for some reason it confused the hierarchy in some way, where basically it wasn't taking into account the actual motion of the X and Y angle parameters, which I find very unusual. It's probably the one time that I have realized just how important it is to make sure that you have the right part selected for the creation of a deformer. But that was my fix for it, was to basically click on the deformer, go into the inspector window and select face. So now it's located in the face folder, which also contains all of the other facial expressions that the character has. So yes, I felt like this was a very important thing to throw in there, because this was a new thing that I learned, let's face it. So hopefully that was useful, and yeah, let's carry on with the rest of it. Just keep that in mind though as we progress through the tutorial, because you'll see that I'll be not really paying too much attention obviously to the root part that I've selected for the deformers, but just keep that in mind as you're watching. So what I'm going to do is highlight the X parameter here, the angle X, and click on add free keyforms. And then we're going to do that for the Y angle too, and add free keyforms. And then this little hook icon here, just click on it to link the parameters together. So basically how this works is that you have the neutral state, which is basically your character looking straight on ahead like that already. This is when the character looks up, this top keyform. The bottom keyform is when you look down, and this is when you look right, and this is when you look left. And then that's basically the up and down for the looking to the left side, and this is the right with the up and down motion for the right side too. So it's actually a lot easier with this character because you don't have to consider too much in terms of deformation. So just make sure you have the deformer obviously highlighted. Go on the far right keyform here and just nudge it to the right like that. And then the same for the left here, just click to the left and nudge it to the left like that. We've already got some basic movement. From the middle here, go on the top keyform here, look up like that by nudging it up, and then go to the bottom keyform here in the middle, nudge it down like that. And then once you've done the main keyforms here, so up, down, left and right, go on this menu here, show palette menu, scroll down to where it says synthesize corners, and this should be fine. Click on OK, and now it should have done the movement for you for these corners here too. You've got also the left and right up and down motion, but you also have the corner movement too, so it does like a diagonal movement on the basis of what you've inputted through the main directions. So there we go, that's the face with its basic X and Y movement. So if we were to actually play this, you can see that the character is actually able to move the face as well as the mouth. I don't know why, but for some reason the preview button for that doesn't take into account the eye blinking, so don't worry about that. It does work, the eye blinking does work, it just for some reason doesn't do the eye blinking here. So yeah, like that's a very basic start to the X and Y parameters as well. Again, every time that you move your head now, your character's face will now be moving in those directions. It may need some tweaking though, because having said that though, I'm noticing the lip, like something I hadn't really considered really was how you could end up seeing the the imperfections of the lips here when the character's head turns like that, which is a shame. I didn't really take that into account, but in any case, I might be able to make it work. So what I'm thinking is that I think I need to add the cream and sprinkles, so this particular part of the character, I need to add that warp deformer into the body deformer here. However, I did still like the idea of the bow and the dango being put into their own deformers so that I can freely move that wherever I want it to. But I do feel like that as far as the cream goes, it has to stay uniform to the body's perspective. So that's why I put it into the body deformer. With that all selected, all we have to do is go and create 3 keyforms for the X and Y parameter. Now with that in mind, I do have to edit the warp deformer again so that it actually covers up the cream here, because otherwise it might not deform correctly. So I did that by holding down Control and dragging the bounding box. With the body deformer selected, all we have to do is go on the X and Y parameter here and add 3 more keyforms. So this is where we're going to start trying to add some perspective to our character, some movement. Now I just realised also, I'm sorry about backtracking a little bit, but there is the sugar sparkles too, because I've completely forgotten that was a thing. The sugar sparkles need to be also added into the body warp deformer as well, so that it stays consistent with the deformation of the body deformer too. Hopefully you guys will understand that, but yeah, at this point we should have everything move the way it should. So in this case we're going to try and deform the character slightly to imply a bit of perspective when the character turns. The quickest way to get started with the perspective is to just literally use the simple bounding box here for the deformer. Make sure that the right keyform is selected here, and we're just going to bring it back like that. But I'm also going to spread it back like that at the back of the character here. So we've got like some slight movement going on. And then go onto the far left and do the same thing. We're going to bring it in like that, and then we're going to spread it out from the back there slightly. Then for the upper keyform here, I kind of like the idea of squishing the character down a little bit like that. And then for the looking down, I'm just going to raise the character up like that. So again, we just need to go on synthesize corners in this menu here. Click on OK. And it's done the main movement for us. Of course the dangos and the bow needs adjusting. Like I say, I'd rather do that manually. If I was to highlight the dango and the bow, we can go on the X and Y parameter and go on 3 keyforms. And I'm going to do this one at a time though. So if I was to go to the right keyform here, I'm just going to move the bow to the right like that. Make sure that obviously it's actually sitting on the head. I mean, it's meant to be very slight. At the minute, we're just trying to get the base movement down for this. When the character looks up, I would believe that the bow would go down like that. And when she looks down, it would actually be raised up like that. There we go. And again, the bow will have to be sent back like that. And then once we've done the main directions, just go on synthesize corners, click OK. I think some elements may need to be adjusted though, but I think I'm fairly happy with that. I think there's something a little off going on with that keyform there. Might be to do with the placement of this one here, the one I started with. Synthesize corners can be pretty good, but sometimes it can be a little off. less severe. It's still a nice little shortcut, potentially, anyway. And then after that, we've got the dangos, so we just need to manually move them to... I think I'll start with the up and down motion this time. I'm going to bring the dangos down, like that. And then I'm going to raise them up, like that. And then, when we turn left, bring the dangos back, like that. And then, when we turn right... bring the dangos a little bit back like that. And then use synthesize corners. There we go. It's not perfect, like I say, because I'm doing this quite quickly. Could be improved. Kind of riding up a little bit, so I'll bring it back down again. There we go. Yeah, I'm not too keen on the movement of the dangos, but there's something going on there at least. And the rotation, the easiest part of the whole thing, I would say, is to go highlight the rig rotation, click on the angle Z parameter here, and add 3 keyforms. This will be the neutral state. This will be the character leaning to the left, like that. And this keyform here is the character leaning to the right, like that. There we go. Let's just see how the character's looking so far. Yeah, so that's how it's looking so far. So we got some movement going on again. This is all movement that can be done with the webcam, but very basic, like I say. It could be far more improved. There could be far more deformation going on. But that's the base movement down for the character. Now, the breathing. Again, the breathing can be quite easy to do. If we were to highlight the breathing parameter and highlight the warp deformer of rig, we can add some keyforms. So if we go on warp deformer of rig, just click on that deformer, add 3 keyforms to the breathing parameter, and the far left keyform here is the character breathing out. The far right keyform will be the character breathing in. If we go onto the far right, we're going to try and create the impression that the character is effectively inflating in a way because they're breathing in quite a bit. So I'm just using the anchor points to imply something inflating a little bit. That might be too much, actually. That might be too exaggerated. I'm just trying my best to imply a difference in movement here. This would be a good time for you to add any additional movements to if you want to add them. It's very much possible. Like, you already have the potential to use like on and off toggles and animations, but this is a really good way of adding just some very slight movement to your character without having to worry too much about toggles, technically. It's, yeah, just be careful though, because it could be quite easily overdone. Subtle is usually key when it comes to stuff like this. Do your best. But yeah, that could be considered a breathing in. So if we go to the far left, we're going to try and imply a bit of a deflated breathing out perspective. And hell, it doesn't even have to be breathing, it could just be a sort of pulsing, whatever it is that you want to achieve out of the idle animation. It's up to you, honestly. I'm not too happy with the way the breathing animation works for my character though, but yeah, it's just, you know, I'm trying to do it really quickly, basically. It's not 100%, but that's how you would do the breathing animation technically. This is something that you'd see automatically play out on Vtube Studio 2. I don't think you have much room to edit the timing of these things. I don't think there is a way of editing timing of breathing. But yeah, like, so this is where we're at the minute. There's a lot that I would like to do though, like say with the sparkle effect. I want to kind of create the effect of sparkling using the breathing parameters too. It does have a bit of a bounce to it though. It does have like a little bit of a kind of squidginess to it, which is ideal for my character, I will say. So I just put the model into Vtube Studio. If you want to learn how that works, feel free to check out this video because I've made a big introduction to Vtube Studio, which all still applies right now. So feel free to have a good look at that. But I've just basically put the mochi into the software just to see how it functions, especially to do with the mouth and just generally how the blinking is looking and the breathing and stuff. When you load up the software, of course, make sure that you allow it to make the parameters so that you can make the edits you need to make. Now, as you can see right now, this is actually me not using the audio-based lip sync. In this case, though, I'm going to actually change it to audio-based lip sync to see how it looks. To do this, you just have to go into input and then look for voice volume plus mouth open. So this will allow you to open your mouth via the webcam as well as opening the mouth as you speak using the microphone. So I'm going to select that, and as we can see, it's a little bit more reliable, let's say. Now you may need to tweak it though, because I am noticing that the mouth is constantly always opening and there's no real moment in time where the character stops opening its mouth unless I stop completely fully speaking. So one way to deal with this is to just tweak these settings here. When you load up Vtube Studio, it might show something like 2 point something or other. I brought it down to 1, and one way of quite possibly fixing this is to just lower this amount down, so maybe something like 0.5. And as you can see, that there's a little bit more resistance to the way the mouth is moving now. Now this is pretty good because it means it closes a little bit more reliably, like I say, and you could go so far as to give it a limit range too. If we go on the limit range here, then that should limit the movement a little bit more. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on this because with mouth shapes anyway, it might be a little bit of trial and error, but it seems to be working from what I can tell from what we've basically made so far. We've got the mouth working, the eyes are blinking also with my eye blinking on webcam, and yeah, it's all working as it should, and we're going to go back to Live2D and continue working on this model. Okay, so we're in Live2D again, and what we're going to do is just refine on the movements that we've got already. There's a lot of mistakes here, like say for example, we moved these set of dangos here, but we hadn't done it for the up and down motion. So what I'm going to do here is literally click on one of these dangos and click on the deformer here, and we're just going to go on synthesize corners like that, and it should now be properly aligned with the corner keyforms. There may still be a degree of editing here too, like as you notice, it kind of is fine until we reach this point in this top left keyform. So effectively just look at this keyform here and see how the dango should be adjusted. You could maybe just bring it down a little bit like that, and that should be a little bit more aligned. So again, I think the similar things happening with the bow. If we go to one of these keyforms, you might see that the bow is slightly moving. So let's go on synthesize corners with the bow selected for the deformer that we edited. Click OK. And again, that should be a little bit more aligned. But yeah, I know it's sort of so that the dangos are not quite aligned with the other keyforms. You can probably see how the synthesized corners can be good sometimes, but they're not so good in certain occasions. So in this case, it's just about refinement and moving it all. So again, just kind of align it with the keyform below it and do the same for this one too. Nudge it to the left a little bit, like that. And because of this keyform here, let's just bring it down a little bit more to align it with the bottom keyforms. And having just a little bit of movement isn't the end of the world, really. Now, since our character is looking up, we definitely need to do something about this cream here. As you can see, we have separate layers for this, but we can possibly get away with just using the one deformer here. Highlighting the cream and sprinkles, all you have to do is create some keyforms, 3 keyforms for the X and Y parameter here. And when our character looks up, we can just deform it, just bring it up like that. And we can even like set the cream back a little bit like this. And we now have a little bit of perspective going on. Then, if we go down to this keyform, we could effectively stretch out this cream so it goes and drips a little bit more further down the face, and maybe very slightly bring the cream down like that. So we've got a little bit of a stretchiness going on effectively here. And every time that we look left and right, we could additionally add a little bit more perspective here. So maybe we can make that cream kind of like go backwards like this. Bring it back a little further. Something like that. So there's like slight backwards movement going on. And with that, maybe we can possibly even edit the cream so that there's a slight movement going on from the middle. And then if we go on to the left, do a similar thing here too. Since it's going backwards from the right, we need to make it so that the cream is widening a little bit more. So if we kind of do something like this for the left side, and like bring it in, make it move that way. So once you've done this main keyform, all you have to do is go on synthesize corners again, and it will synthesize the corners. But of course, just always know that there is a degree of editing involved with this. I'm doing it very quickly, like I say, but generally speaking, you may need to put a little bit more time into it to make it exactly the way you want it to be. If you find yourself still editing one of the main keyform directions here, so either up, down, left, right, you can still get away with editing, say, the left keyform like I just did there, go on synthesize corners, and it's fine. Like, it will just overwrite what you have in the corner keyforms. So we have some movement going on with the cream. It's not 100%, but that kind of creates the impression that there's some perspective going on with the form of the mochi body in this case. Now this does mean that we do need to change the dango placement and the bow again. I'm just going to highlight the bow, because if the head's moving up like that, then the bow should be deforming to a certain degree. It should be kind of like a little bit more squished. Like that. And this would be a time where the bow might be a little lower, but also a little wider or a little bigger. And now that we've done the main keyforms, go on synthesize corners and just double check how it looks. The thing about the dangos, I will say, is that I don't think I want it to move too much, and I think I can afford to reconsider its placement though for this far left. If we can just cover it slightly more over the cream on the far left, then that might work out a little more. And maybe instead I could attempt to rotate it slightly. I mean, I kind of like that. I like there to be a degree of rotation. So what I've effectively done is that far top left keyform there, I've rotated it. With this keyform though, I didn't rotate it, but in this keyform here, I did rotate it again in a similar way, in a similar direction. And I think it just kind of gives it an additional movement that just sort of seems a bit wobbly. So I kind of like that. I might just do that too for the other keyforms. So I think with the main directional keyforms here, so left, middle, and right keyforms, I think I'll just go into this middle keyform and rotate the dango like this in the same direction. So again, we get this wobbliness of the dango. And then when we go down here, I think I'll do a similar thing as we did with the top one, which is rotate it on the far left keyform so that it goes into the middle. We don't edit that one. And then we go into the bottom right keyform and rotate it again to the side. So again, there's that a bit of wibbliness going on. I just think it's nice to add some additional movement like that, and it's so subtle too. Once you start using it as a VTuber model, you won't really notice the wiggle, but it'll be a nice little sort of additional movement that's very slight, very gradual. Now, I think another thing I'd like to do is adjust the face. So the X and Y face we've got going in this X and Y angle, I feel like they're a little bit too harsh. So what I'm going to do is go to this far left keyform here and just sort of bring it back a little bit like that. And then over here, the similar thing. I'm just going to bring back the face slightly like that. And then the face looking up and down. I think I might just keep, actually. It's not too bad. Of course, any edits that you make with the body, it's going to have to be taken into consideration. It has to be synthesized again using the options, but yeah. So I'm just going to edit this body just a little more. Just emphasize the up and down motion a little more. And I think that's doing all right, really. Now we've effectively done what we've done to improve the left and right up and down motions so far. But I want to refine the body a little bit more because I'm not liking how the body's kind of like sliding outwards like that. It just doesn't seem very natural. So what I'm going to do is take these points here and just bring it in a little bit like that. And then with the right keyform, bring in the body a little bit like that. So that the movement's a little more subtle. You may need to keep editing, see if you can correct some of the visuals that may not be quite working for you. And I may just bring the body, and I'm going to nudge it as well using the arrow keys on my keyboard with it selected. I'm just going to nudge it to the right slightly like that on the far right keyform. And I'm also going to nudge it to the left a little bit on the far left keyform. We have some movement going on, just like that. And again, I'm just going to try using synthesize corners. And hopefully it should look a little better in terms of movement. Just like that. Ah yes, that's something I forgot to do. I was just looking at the face, and because we did the left and right motion here, we need to synthesize the corners for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Sorry about that, completely forgot. So that they're perfectly aligned too. So yeah, I'm kind of liking the way it's looking so far. Okay, so I kind of liked the idea of adding some kind of face rotation so that I can maybe unsync it from the body. I realised that effectively what we have so far is that the body for the character is in the angle Z parameter along with these X and Y angles here. Normally I'd like to use X, Y angle and Z angle for just the face. The way you can tackle this and basically transfer it to this here, which is probably more ideal, let's say, is to effectively highlight your main rotation for the body, click on one of the keyforms, then go on change. Then you can put it into body Z, and it should have transferred over. Now you will notice though, however, that the values are not quite correct here, but that's fine. So we can fix this. All we have to do is click on this parameter and then click on edit keyforms manually. So where it says -30 here, we need to edit this so it says -10 because that's the parameter value set basically for the body parameter. So in the case of this, we have -10 on one end of the meter and 10.0 on the right side of the meter. So we need to adjust the keyform so that it sits on -10 and 10.0. So this is the way to do it. If we just type in and replace -30 with -10 and click enter, or press enter, you'll see that the keyform is now there. Now all we have to do is the same thing here. So change it from 30 to 10 and press enter. And now the keyforms as they should be. Make sure that you click OK, and now it works. Now that we have angle Z available, it's just about creating a rotation for the face. Now I've already done this, but if you find yourself in a situation where you can't find and it's disappeared, this rotation, because I had to figure that out myself, it's probably because you've got certain layers or folders hidden. So make sure that you have unhidden parts of the face that you have, so that the rotation deformer will reappear again. But now that we have the rotation for the face, just click on it, create 3 keyforms like before, and we can just give the face some slight rotation. So now we have this parameter free, we can use this new rotation that we've created. I'm going to hold down the control key and just drag it down like this, so it's just below the mouth, because I think it's just a better place to have it rotate like this. And then we're just going to create 3 keyforms for the angle Z, like this. So again, left keyform is when the character's face rotates to the left, and then the right keyform is when the character rotates their face to the right. There's just very slight rotation going on with the face. Might even make it a little subtler than that. Which is nice, because now that we have it separated, we have the body, we can also give our character some slight face rotation too. And when you're in Vtube Studio, you can effectively tweak this to however you want in terms of sensitivity and in movement. So it's just little things like that which are quite nice to just be able to customize and just add a little bit more movement to the model. Now effectively we've created a very basic model so far. I'm going to dabble now into the physics. Effectively we've already got 3 already made parameters for physics. And you can make as many as you want too, by the way. If you're using Vtube Studio, you'll be able to make all sorts, like you can make so many parameters for it effectively, and it allows for even more varied movement. It's really quite cool. With this in mind, I would always say that when you go and move on to making physics for anything, always make a new deformer. Don't be using the same deformer that you've used for the X and Y parameters like we did with the cream, for example, and the dangos and such. We need a separate deformer, otherwise you're going to have to go into every single keyform here and edit it. It's a nightmare, don't do it. I've seen many questions in fact about how for some reason the face is not aligned to the X and Y angles, and they're just like one eye is blinking in fact in one keyform and it's not blinking in the other keyform, that kind of thing. And that is simply because you have used the same deformers as your X and Y positions, so of course you're going to have to go into every single keyform just to edit that. So this is a very frequent question that I get. Please just make another deformer, otherwise yes, you're going to have to do it for every single keyform, and all of the work that you put into it will be just it's unnecessary amount of work. So just make sure that you just always make a deformer. It's just the easiest way around it. So in the case of, say, the breathing, we have the breathing going on already with the character. I'm not sure if I'm too keen on the way it's looking though, sadly. I might just redo the breathing. But despite the fact that we've got a breathing parameter going on effectively with this rig, we have to make another one. If we want to create any physics for the body entirely, we need to literally click on this deformer where you have the breathing going on, create a new warp deformer. You can even call it body physics and create. So we now have a new deformer, and that is specifically for physics. If you edit this, you're going to have to go into every single keyform for the breathing parameter to make it correlate with what you just done with the physics for the body. So that's why it's important to make sure you do that. Use plenty of deformers just to be absolutely certain, because like I say, you can end up just doing an unnecessary amount of work, and I've been down that road, don't get me wrong, I've done the same thing before. So yeah, it's just coming from experience at this point. So as you can see, because of the new deformer that we've created, there is no keyforms for this parameter, so that leaves us free to literally use one of these parameters and make the physics. So the simplest thing we could do is literally just go on any of these, like just go on the first one, create 3 keyforms for this new body physics we've created, and on the far left side we can make our character kind of like bounce downwards like this. And then on the far right, we can actually bring it up like this. So just to show you exactly what we've done here, if we go into modeling, open physics scene blending settings. This is where we add the physics of the new parameter we just created for it. You can also see a bit of a preview of your character here and its breathing interval and such. So if you're not too keen on the way it's looking in terms of breathing, this can be changed and you can edit it, no problem at all. So to be able to create physics, we need to add a group. So if we can call this body physics, it's really up to you whether or not you want to add these physics, but we could add like very quickly a already preset physics setting. So if we go on short, maybe we can just try it and click OK. Then we can just add whatever we want here. The influence for the physics needs to come from the angle X, Y, and even Z parameters. It depends. Because say, for example, if you want your character to bounce like we just did there, like we've created an up and down motion for the physics for that particular parameter, we could have it just only work with the angle X. So every time you look up and down, it does a little bounce. But if you did want it to be both for angle X as well as Y, maybe even Z for the rotation, you can do that too. You can even do it for the body Z, because that's what we did for the rotation of the body Z. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and use these particular angles and other parameters. I'm just going to increase the effectiveness of all of them. Now this is interesting in the sense of there's a varying amount of effectiveness as far as physics go with this. So say for example you don't really want the wobbles happening too much every time, say, the body moves. You could maybe make that a low number of 20, but you want the emphasis of the wobble or the bounce to happen, say, more so when the character is looking up and down. You can adjust it using these values here. So again, you can kind of like bring it to about 30 for this. For the Z angle, maybe you can bring it down to 20 with the body Z as well. The highest values could be literally the X and Y angle. You can do that. So say for example, if we keep it at angle X and Y 40, angle Z 20 and body Z 20, that might be kind of consistent. Now that we've got that sorted, we don't really have any bounce yet for the character. And that's because we need to go into the output settings here. We need to add the physics parameter here. So just click on add, find the physics parameter that you added the physics and movement to, select it and click OK. Now it should work. Again, it's very subtle in this example because it is literally an up and down motion, so it might be kind of hard to see. But you could also change these settings here to create an overall reaction. So if you just messed around with these settings, you can possibly see the pendulum changing. If you start moving it, you can see that the properties of the character will change too. But let me just create or find one that you can see a difference in. Yeah, personally I think the hair short in this case is probably good enough. But like I say, feel free to have a bit of a play around with these settings, because the more you play around with them, the more you can kind of like get a bit of a different outcome, let's say, from it. You can make it heavier like I just did there. But if you find yourself not being too keen on the way it's moving, you can just go on these presets here click on short and import, and it will bring it back to normal again, to default. So we've effectively created some bounce to the character. Now, in the case of the dango, I've always really liked the idea of adding a bit of a bounce to the dango every time the character were to maybe look up or down. So I'm going to see if I can do that. Again, we're going to have to create a different deformer for this, for the physics. So we're going to call it dango physics. With this new deformer that we've created, I'm going to go ahead and create two keyforms. And what I want to do is change one of them so that the dango is raised upwards. So if we just raise it up like that, so it's above the head, we've got a little bit of movement going on there. Now, if you really wanted to, you could create a rotation deformer as well and put it into the same parameter. So if you have the dango physics highlighted, go on the rotation deformer, and we can just create a new rotation for it. I think I'm happy with the location of the rotation deformer. So again, I'm going to go ahead and make two keyforms in the same parameter. So when it goes up like this, I could very slightly make it rotate like that. And then maybe even on this side, I could possibly just rotate it like that. Depends on what you're going for, really. And if you really wanted to mix it up, you could actually create 3 keyforms like this and give it a different rotation completely. So that's got like a variation of movement going on. We need to rotate a little bit more like that. So we got a little bit of a wiggle. Like that. So we can see how that looks in the modeling open physics settings. Now we're in the main physics scene blending settings again. And to add another physics, all we have to do is go on add. And again, call this dango physics. And again, pick a preset. It's all completely fine. Now you might be wondering, oh no, where's the other physics settings? Basically, it's under this here. You've created groups for you to select. So we have the dango physics selected, but we can go back if you wanted to change anything with the body physics. Just click on body physics and everything is as it should be, where it should be. So let's go back to the dango physics. Again, every time that the character moves, I want it to react to those movements. So I'm going to pick those parameters. Again, add these values in, whatever values you want for whatever parameter for effectiveness. You can also reflect the movement, by the way. This is really cool. If you kind of liked the look of the physics, but you kind of like the idea of the physics being reflected in motion, just tick this box. Okay, now we've done that. Just got to add the second parameter again using the add button in the output settings and click on hair move side. Again, we should see some wiggle going on for the dango. Now I might actually add a little bit more effectiveness to the body Z because I think it would make sense to do that. But I like how it just bounces like that. It's really cool. Pretty cute. So again, if you want more effectiveness in one particular parameter in movement, all we have to do is just raise it up like that. As you can see, there's more effectiveness in the wobble now. Could maybe even go higher than that. It's really cool. I really think this is a really awesome thing. I do encourage you to give it a good go. You can even vary it up, like I say. Maybe I can have this particular motion reflected, so it will move differently in comparison to the way it wiggles when you move the head, like that. It'll just wiggle a different direction. I might even go as far as to raise it for the angle Z parameters just to give it some sort of chance of being seen when the rotations happen. Like that. Now, I've also kind of like the idea of the bow bouncing in a similar way, but maybe not as exaggerated as the dango. And this could be bundled into the same parameter. So if we were to pick up the bow, again, we're going to have to make physics though for it with a new warp deformer. So create a new warp deformer like we did previously, call it bow physics. And now we have the deformer that we need for creating new physics. Click on this parameter, the second one, and create two keyforms. Now we can make it bounce upwards as well. I'm going to nudge the bow up on this left keyform here. Let's bring it up like that, so that it goes up and down like that too. So let's have a look at this physics settings and see what it's actually done, because we've already got settings down for the dango, right? So since we put it in the same parameter as the dangos, the bow should be reacting in a similar way. So as you can see, the bow is reacting to the bounce of the dangos too. They are in sync to each other, and it might be worth considering giving it its own separate parameter. You can make more of them. You can make as many physics parameters as you want now with Vtube Studio, which is pretty cool. I think what I might in fact do with the bow is reverse the keyforms here. So instead of the bow raising up on the left keyform, I want it to raise up on the right keyform. So to be able to do that, all you have to do is click on one of the keyforms and go on reflect. Now the motion is reflected. So if we go again into the physics settings, you can see that the bow is now bouncing in reverse to the dangos. Like that. So with the final parameter, I kind of like the idea of seeing if I can create a bit of an expanded squish effect with the body. So what I'm going to do here is click on the warp deformer for the body here, and again, we do not want to be editing this one for the physics because we've already got keyforms set for that one. Create another deformer and call this body physics 2. And now we can use this new deformer for this third parameter. So again, I'm going to create probably about 2 keyforms to see how we go. And effectively what I want to do is just widen the body a little bit, like that. Go into the physics settings, and again, add a new physics group. We could call this, again, body physics 2. Pick a preset, click on OK. Then go on add and select whichever parameters you want it to be influenced by in terms of its physics. Click OK. And again, add however much value you want. You can even go random with it, really, like see how you feel about it, but you can adjust it more specifically if you know exactly what you want it to look like and be. So we got that, then go on output settings, click add, and then add the third parameter. So let's see how it looks. There you go. So there's like a nice little bounce to the character every time they move. I really like that. It's got a real nice bounce to the character now. Now, of course, when you're in Vtube Studio, you can also change the effectiveness of the physics too in that software. So if you really want the physics to be exaggerated, you could really go that far with it because there's a setting for it, which is really nice. So yeah, it's as simple as that. That's all I did with the physics, and we now have like this really nice natural physics movement added to our VTuber model every time we move our head. Now, to expand on the breathing parameter, we can add an idle animation to the character if you wanted to. In this case, I've got what I'd like to call sugar sparkles on my character. So I want to add a little sparkle, a little bit of idle animation sparkle to my model. And that can be easily done using the breathing parameter. However, it is possible that you could create animation parameters so that you can animate it, make it into a animation file for you then to use it as an idle animation for VTube Studio. But I do actually believe that there's something nice about putting it all into the breathing parameters still. It's far more programmed into it. Not only do you have the natural breathing of your character involved, but also the natural idle animation built into it. But I guess it just depends on the person really, and whether or not you like the idea of maybe swapping out certain idle animations. I suppose it's really just up to you what it is you're looking for in your VTuber model. But for me, I've just always really liked using the breathing parameters for that specifically. So I'm just going to go ahead and hunt down these sparkles, and it appears to be in their own deformers right here. So I'm just going to unhide these. And we are going to highlight the parts, because what we want to do is edit the opacity of these layers. What I'm going to do here is highlight the breathing parameter, and we're going to create 3 keyforms for these highlighted layers for the sparkle, like this. Go onto the far left, and we're going to start with sparkle 1 on the right. There's already a low opacity because I did already add low opacity to this, which is nice because it means that if we wanted this to be 100%, we can do that. But what I'm going to do is lower the opacity of this right one sparkle here to 0, so it disappears. With sparkle 1 left, I want it to stay the same, but I do want sparkle 2 to disappear. So I'm going to make that disappear. When we go to the middle keyform here, I want these sparkles to reappear, but I do want the left sparkles here to disappear and make it 0 opacity. I also want the sparkle 2 to disappear on the right. This. So you can see there's a bit of a sparkle effect going on already. On the far right keyform, I want the currently selected sparkle here, the sparkle 2, to reappear, but I want the right sparkle 1 to disappear again, like this. Now I want sparkle 2 on the left to disappear and make sparkle 1 stay the same. There you go. Just by checking out the keyforms here, you can see there's a sparkle effect going on. I know this can be a little confusing, and in fact I may have explained it a little bit better in my other video. I am sorry if I am referring to other videos, but technically this video is like a bit of a collection of all of the videos I've done on this channel already. But I have done a singled out video all about idle animation for your VTuber model using the breathing parameters, so feel free to have a good look at that. And I do actually talk about how to make a sparkle effect using the jelly character that I made a little while ago. Now, if we were to go into the physics settings, you can see the sparkles happening right now on the character. I actually really like how that's turned out. It looks so cool. Yeah, that is how it's turning out so far. Yeah, so this is a good preview. If you want to check out the preview of the physics, as well as things like the breathing parameter and stuff like that, this is actually a really good setting for that. If you just click on this, the play button up here, you can effectively see how it could look in motion potentially as a VTuber model. You can also even record the animation here as well if that's something you're interested in. It can sometimes give you a nice starting point if you're looking to animate your character, and you can expand on it using keyframes in the animation tool for Live2D. So yeah, this is what we've got so far for the character. Now, I'm noticing there is some imperfections to do with the mouth here, and I feel like that could be edited quite easily using the vertices and just kind of like cleaning it up a little bit more so it's a little less obvious. I guess that's kind of on me though, sadly, because I hadn't have softened this element all too much. As at least the top lip part that's meant to cover the main inner mouth part, I think that needed to be a little smoother because you can definitely see it when the character's looking up or looking down. So that's the main base of the model sorted, really. I'm very happy with how that's turning out so far. Like I say, things like this mouth here, when the character turns left, you can very much see some issues with that. So it's actually, like I say, kind of possible to edit this accordingly. So say, for example, if I was to go into the mouth here, just be a little bit more aware, I guess, of how it's working, because the reason why it got spread out like that in the first place was to cover up the main inner mouth. So if I was to just drag it in like that, you can see the inner mouth sort of showing through, but it could be just repositioned a little better so that maybe you don't still see it, but it's kind of, I don't know, not as noticeable if you can help it. So every time the character's mouth opens and such, that could be still kind of hidden behind the mouth a little bit more. So it's very easy to find yourself spending a lot of time just tweaking the mouth in this way. And if for whatever reason you wanted to copy the values of a keyform, you can just go Control-Shift-C on a keyform and paste it into whatever keyform you have there. So Control-Shift-V to paste. So again, it will kind of adopt the values you just edited. You may still need to edit parts here and there though, of course. But generally speaking, it's a good way of tweaking things. So there you go. It's not perfect, but it's certainly better, I think. It's definitely better than what it was. I mean, it's far more noticeable when the character looks up, sadly, because of the yellow patch on the character design. I don't think there's not a lot you can really do about that, unless you were to, I don't know, create a different upper lip, let's say, where it effectively is the same color, and maybe you can swap it out whenever the character looks up that way with the actual color of the model. That's the only thing I can think of doing to tackle that in a way. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, really. I didn't really anticipate that being a problem until now, to be honest. But I mean, one way that I could tackle it, I guess, is to make it so that the character doesn't look that high up, so it becomes an influence in any way in that regard. Yeah, kind of tough, really. Can be a bit hard going. So it's not perfect just for that reason alone, but it's okay. I suppose it's just something to consider if you have characters that have like lots of multicolours going on in their design. You have to sort of take into account things like the upper lip or things that could kind of get in the way of the way it could look. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from trying to edit the inner mouth so that you don't actually need a top lip at all. I think it's possible to actually still do that, but I think it's just always been recommended to use top lips and things to cover it because it's just less work, really. Like I say though, I think there may be something in possibly attempting to swap out this lip with a lighter colour every time a character looks in a certain direction. I think it's very much possible to do that, but I really don't want to do that, so either way, it is what it is. Yes, I think the next part is to actually work on creating on and off toggles. So at the minute we do have a blush going on, and I do happen to have some hands, which is something that I've failed to work with really. It's not been added into any kind of deformer, so it's fine though. We can work with that. We can effectively find these layers here, so we have our own deformers for these two as well, and we can add it into the body parameters here so that it should adopt the same movement as everything else. So if we highlight these hands and drag it into the warp deformer for the body, then it should move in some capacity to the X and Y angle movement. Like that. Which I think it's done a really good job actually. It's not too bad. But with every time we move to the right and left, for example, it might be good to try and move the hands a little bit more so independently. So the best way to do that would be to literally highlight the warp deformers for the hands and create X and Y angles for it. The right keyform selected, we can just nudge it a little bit to the right like that. And with the left, we can nudge it a little bit to the left. And for the bottom keyform, we could maybe bring them a little bit further down like that. And then with the top keyform, we can just bring them up like that if we wanted to. And then we can go on synthesize corners. And now we've got a little bit more movement going on with the hands. Now that in itself could be its own toggle. I'm not too impressed with the way it looks on this side, because I feel like this is the most important side for my VTuber models, because this is the direction I'm always looking when I'm playing a game on Twitch. So I think, in fact, the one way to deal with it is to actually independently move this one as much as possible so that it's more appropriate for the left side. And I might even just deform it slightly too, so it's a little rounder, so it doesn't obscure, let's say, the face too much. We could actually even make this a little bit bigger too on the left, so we can create a sense of possible perspective even, like that. So again, we can do a similar thing here if we wanted to. If I could just bring the... whoops. If we can just bring the hand as close to the left as possible, then I can round it off a little bit, like this, to create the impression of perspective. And then with this one, again, we can also make this a little bigger. So I'm thinking this could be its own on and off toggle too. And again, this is why it's so much easier to effectively not mess with the main raw piece of your model, because since we haven't actually done anything with the raw piece, we can just create a very easy parameter for it. So what I'm going to do is create a new parameter for an on and off toggle. I'm just going to call this hands, and I'm going to call it param_hands. And then I'm going to make the minimum to be 0.0, and I want this maximum to be 1.0. Okay, so the hands is down there. You can also make your own folder. We can call it toggles. And we can drag it into this folder. And there it is. I like to put the toggles folder literally above everything else for easy access. We have now got a new parameter for the hands. Now what I want to do is just literally highlight these two pieces here. Create two keyforms. And this left keyform is literally when the toggle is off. All we have to do with these two highlighted is go 0 opacity for that keyform. And when the toggle turns on, through shortcut using Vtube Studio, it will just reappear like that and work as it should. That is how quick and easy it is to create an on and off toggle. And in fact, we can do that with the blush here too. So if we locate the blush, we can create a new parameter, call it blush, param blush underscore. .0, 1.0. And with the blush highlighted, we can just go add two keyforms, have the left keyform selected, and bring the opacity down to 0. So again, we've created ourselves an on and off toggle for the blush. So as you can see, this is the basis of what an on and off toggle pretty much is. And since we have created separate mouth shapes, potentially, so at the minute, we haven't done anything with them yet, but we do have other mouths we could rig. So I've got a frown, so a sad mouth, and I've also got a super happy mouth. Those could also be used as on and off toggles. Like say for example, if you were blushing or something, you could even have it so that with that toggle turning on, you can make the mouth change and look happy. Maybe you can even have the hands appear while also blushing, that kind of thing. There's a lot of potential for it really, and I do go into it in another video, a far more detailed video about actual facial expressions and how to make angry and sad ones and stuff like that. So feel free to check that video out too. I feel like this video has become like a crossroads for other videos that I've done in the past, but it really is worth having a look. If you have very specific things you want to learn about, I probably have a video for it. Feel free to check out all my videos on my YouTube channel. I hope to have more soon too. But yeah, that is the basis of creating a VTuber model all in one video too, so I hope it was okay. I feel like I kind of rushed through this a little bit, so I do apologize if it's maybe not as coherent as the others. But in any case, I hope it was helpful, and like I say, I do have a lot of other videos for you to take a look at really. I've got a beginners series and I've also got an advanced series on how to make your own VTuber models. This was just a video I just wanted to make that was effectively literally how to make a model in one big video. It's probably going to be a very long video. I don't actually know how this is going to edit, but the idea was I just wanted to make a big video on something that's considered a little bit more of a beginner's guide to making a simple looking model like this. So yeah, I hope that it was useful, and like I say, be sure to check out the other videos if you want like a more specific set of topics that you're looking for. I hope that I can help with that too in some form. Do feel free to leave in the comments below though any questions you may have in terms of, I don't know, just the general workings of VTuber models and stuff. But just please be sure to check out my other videos. Be sure to even keep watching this video because you might realise that maybe you missed out on something that might have been the answer that you needed. But I hope that regardless, the videos will help you troubleshoot, and that's really what I think is key. It's always been a bit of a task, let's say, when I was learning how to use Live2D. Just generally, I've seen so many awesome models on Twitter as well, on the basis of my tutorials, helping them out in that way, and it just means a lot. It really does. I just think it's such an awesome medium, and it just allows people to be able to express themselves and be the characters they want to be, or be themselves. You know, I just think it's such a great communicative sort of, instead of using a webcam, you're being creative and making your own models, and I think that's just a fantastic thing. So I'm just very, very happy to be able to get people into that line of content creation, and it just makes me so happy. So yeah, like, do keep at it, guys. I know this is a very tough software. I know it can be quite tough to create these kinds of things, but I do believe in all of you. You're all so creative, and I do believe that you have the ability to take the information that I've given you on YouTube and be able to make great things with it. So with that, guys, I hope to see you all in the next video. I hope this was helpful, and do leave in the comments below any questions you may have. And I hope to see you all later. Have a good one, guys. Take care.